Okay, gentlemen, Chazakilu Buchim, thank you very much for joining us tonight for the learning of Parashat Shavua, Parashat Shemot. Tonight's shiur has been sponsored graciously by Mr. and Mrs. Kusha Askari, Leilui Nishmat Kusha's father, Reuven ben Ezra. May Hashem help us the Shema to go higher and higher in Gan Eden, B'ezrat Hashem. We'd also like to dedicate tonight's learning Leilui Nishmat Miriam Fega bat Ehud Levi, may her neshama go higher in Gan Eden, B'ezrat Hashem, and also for the refuah shlema of Mordechai Merdad ben Evelyn, for the refuah shlema of Yair Chaya bat Shafnaz, refuah shlema of Libar Mitzivya, and Kol Cholei Yisrael. Hashem should send them all a refuah shlema. Do you have any names you want to add, guys, before we start? No? Okay. Amen. Okay, I'm going to start with something. Oh, this is for me? Thank you so much. I'm going to start with something over here that you wouldn't think has much to do with the parasha, but it's very interesting. And we will tie it into the parasha. This is the mitzvah called levaya. Levaya means to escort someone, to be with someone on his way out, to not only host somebody, to give him food, to give him to drink, but then when he leaves, to help him, to walk out with him as well. The mitzvah of levaya. Okay? It's brought down later on. Oh, chazakim u'bruchim. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. So it's brought down that in Sefer Devarim, Parashat Shoftim, Perek Chaf Aleph, Pasuk Zayin, over there it talks about the mitzvah of the Eglah Rufa. We spoke about this not too long ago, thank you. In the past, we spoke about the mitzvah called Eglah Rufa. That is a fellow who unfortunately was found dead in between two cities, and this guy, nobody knows what happened. He was murdered. We don't know how this guy got murdered. So he apparently was alone. And it says the elders of the city have to go out to that area. They have to take a calf that had not done any work, and they break its neck. And they say, our hands, Hashem, did not spill the blood of this man. Please, Hashem, take this cow as an atonement for all of us that we didn't help this guy, we didn't protect this guy. So what it says is that Einenu lo ra'u. They said, our eyes did not see. We didn't see something. What does it mean they didn't see? Says the Gemara Masechet Sotan, it says they didn't see an individual leaving their city without being accompanied by somebody. They didn't see anybody walking out of the city without somebody walking next to him, side by side with him. Because if they would see that and they would let it go, that would be on their heads. Because to let somebody leave the city alone without accompanying him, without guiding him, without being together with him, that would be considered a sin on their heads. So they say, Einenu lo ra'u, we never saw such a thing. So Hashem, please forgive us. We didn't know that there was a person walking alone, unaccompanied, and that he was vulnerable. That's what they are saying. Okay?
If you see them, then they are not alone.
That's what they're saying. We didn't see him. We did not see him. So therefore, we have this big problem that the guy was left alone, and he left, and he was unfortunately vulnerable, and he was murdered. So over here, says the Gemara, it's referring to the idea that there's a mitzvah called levaya. You have a mitzvah to walk this guy out of the city. A mitzvah to not just send him by himself, but to walk him, to take care of him, right? Now, says the Gemara, a very startling statement. Kol ha'ma'achil u'mashke oreach beveito, ve'eino melavehu. The person gives somebody food, he gives him drink in his home, but then on the way out, he does not escort him. Ki'ilu shofech damim. It's like you killed the guy. So here you hosted the guy for a beautiful meal. You gave him whatever beautiful, choresh and all kinds of wonderful things. And now you send him out and you don't walk him out. You don't do livui, right? Mitzvah levaya, you don't do that. So what is the status of your mitzvah? You just took it and threw it in the garbage, as if you killed the guy. It's a very severe thing. Okay?
You like to eat anything.
Now look at what happens. The Rambam writes, based on the Gemara, that when a person has the mitzvah of achnasat orchim and he brings in somebody who needs a place to eat, you bring him to your house, you help him, you take care of him, and then you escort him on the way out. It says which mitzvah is greater? The escorting him is an even higher level than the mitzvah of the achnasat orchim that you did. It's an amazing thing. So we have a real challenge, which is to try and understand what is so important about escorting the person, and why is it so great when you do it, and why is it so bad when you don't. So this is something which, Hashem, we're going to try and figure this out. But the Gemara goes on to give us a lot of very interesting stories and cases about this idea. So, and the first idea is we have to show him the way. They didn't have ways back in the day. You had to show the guy where to go. And if he takes a wrong turn, that could be very harmful to him. That's number one. But also there's an added level of respect. You don't just send him off like that. Okay, goodbye, leave now. Sometimes you have a guy, you can't wait for him to go. So you fed him, you gave him whatever. And okay, bye. Right? Goodbye. It's not the way to do it. So you have to show him that you don't want him to leave. You have to show him that you walk him out. Give him the kavod. Give him the proper kavod.
Bother you.
What?
Bother you at home, and you want him to leave. What you do?
You have to use your good wisdom to do it in a way that he gets the message. But look at this halacha. It says kofim lalevaya shesachar levaya en la shiur. We force the person to escort the person out. The Bedin can actually force the guy to accompany this fellow. Shesachar halevaya en la shiur. Because there is no end to the reward for escorting the person out of the door. It's an infinite reward, which is amazing. So the Gemara gives a very interesting story. The Gemara tells us, actually it's a story from the Tanakh, when the Jewish people were conquering the land of Israel. So there were two tribes, Ephraim and Menashe. These two tribes were trying to capture a city called Bet El. Bet El had an entrance to the city, but nobody knew where it was. Nobody could find the entrance. And then these two tribes saw somebody coming out of the city. Now this guy is a Kanaani, he's a goy from the city. They saw him coming out. Now he doesn't know who they are. And they ask him for directions. How do we get into the city? How do we get in? He doesn't know that they're trying to destroy the city and take over it. But he wants to help people. So he doesn't even talk. The Gemara says he just goes like this, like that. He kind of points a little bit. He doesn't even move his legs, but he shows them the direction. Says the Gemara. What happened next was they went, Ephraim and Menashe figured out how to get in because he showed them. He pointed, he showed them what to do with his mouth, kind of made motions. They go in, they take out the whole city. They take out the entire city, except one guy, this guy. This guy and his family, they left untouched. Now, what's this fellow going to do? A very big predicament right now. They just came, conquered the whole city. They left him and his family. So he got up and he moved. And he built a new city. And this city was called Luz. Now, this city is one of the most unique cities that ever existed. In this city, Luz, Sancherib, who was a king of the Assyrian Empire many years later, the Gemara says, did not touch this city. He didn't touch it. Sancherib, his goal was to mix everybody together, to get everyone to assimilate. He conquered many nations, and he wanted them to all assimilate. So he moved, let's say, the Babylonians from here to there, the Persians from here to there. He moved everybody around, the Jews from here to there, so that they should all mix in with one another. And nobody should have any identity anymore. There was one city he didn't touch. This city called Luz. Then, when Nebuchadnezzar, many years later, was conquering the entire Middle East area, including Israel, there was one city he didn't touch. Luz. He didn't touch. Why? Because the fellow who built this city was careful to show these people how to get to the direction that they need to go in. So he did a part of the mitzvah of levaya, of escorting people, showing people, guiding people the way to go. He did even just a small part. He didn't do the whole thing, just a part of it. Now, the Gemara goes a step further. And it says the city of Luz was so special that people didn't die in the city. Wow. The Malach HaMavet had no control over people in the city. And how would they die? At a certain point, the guy said, enough is enough. He was done. He said, okay, I'm finished. He would step outside the city, and then Malach HaMavet would get it. So he would go, and he would go, and he would go until he was very old. Until what?
They stay young or?
Now they say they got old, but they wouldn't die. Until a person was, okay, enough is enough, and he decided it's time to go. He would decide on his own.
So why Malach didn't go there?
So the same thing that Nebuchadnezzar didn't go, then Sancherib wasn't able to take over. Because the Gemara elsewhere, interestingly enough, the Gemara elsewhere says that Luz was a city that everybody spoke only the truth, which is very interesting. Oh. That's what it says about this place. But this Gemara is attributing this amazing fact about the city to the fact that it was built by the guy that performed the mitzvah of escorting the tribes of Ephraim and Menashe to Bet El. He showed them where to go.
They called it his own city, basically.
They called it his city.
Exactly. He conquered his own city and then he left.
Yes, so he did. They didn't kill him. They said, you helped us, so we're going to keep you alive.
What happened to Luz in the end? In the end.
What happened in the end, like totally? That I don't know. I don't know what was the downfall of the city. I don't know. But eventually, obviously it's not there. What?
Because outside Eretz Israel.
Was it outside of Eretz Israel? I don't think so. Actually. No, this was this. No, Ephraim and Menashe went into Eretz Israel to conquer Bet El. Now this place was somewhere else.
So now in Israel, right? When somebody wants to ask something, what's the Luz tonight?
You know why? Because Luz stands for Luach Zmanim, which means a calendar. What's the calendar? Yeah, that's what that means. You're right, but it's similar. Yeah. So, okay. So now, one more point, gentlemen. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. Kol hamalveh et chavero ba'ir eino nizok. If you escort your fellow in the city, so he leaves your house and you take him and you show him, you walk him out, you accompany him throughout the city, that fellow will not be harmed. He will not be harmed, which is an amazing thing. The fellow won't be harmed. So how does that happen? So over here, the Maharsha says a very interesting idea. The Maharsha says that, you know what it means he won't be harmed? When you escort your fellow, so you're a tzaddik. You're doing a big mitzvah to accompany this guy. As we're learning, it's a huge mitzvah. So you're doing a big mitzvah, you're a tzaddik. What does it say about tzaddikim? It says, we say it in Ashrei every day. Retzon yire'av ya'aseh. What does that mean? When somebody is a God-fearing man, Hashem wants to do his will. Retzon yire'av ya'aseh. So therefore, you are accompanying this fellow. You obviously are showing that your desire, your will is that this guy should be okay. That's why you're walking with him. You want to show him around. You want to show him where he needs to go. You want to give him kavod. So obviously you desire that this person should be okay. So what is your ratzon? Your ratzon, your will is that he should be okay. So what does it say in the pasuk? The will of those who fear Hashem, Hashem does their will. Retzon yire'av yaseh. Hashem will do the will of the people who fear him. So therefore, since you are tzaddik for walking this guy out, Hashem will do your will and will save this person. Okay, it's an amazing thing. So there's so many ideas going on over here. So now, how in the world does this relate to our parasha? So let's take a look. We'll take a step back. It says, Avraham Avinu at the Brit Ben Abitarim was promised the land of Israel. Hashem told Avraham, you're going to be the forefather of a great nation, and the land of Israel will be your inheritance. It's going to go to your offspring. Avraham said, Hashem, what offspring? I'm an old man, and I don't have any children. Right? Ben Meshek Beiti, the Mesek Eliezer. You know who I've got? I've got Eliezer. I don't even have my nephew anymore. My nephew left me. He went to Sodom. I've got Eliezer, this servant. What son? What Israel? What are you talking about? I've got nothing. So what did he say? He said, Bameh eda ki rashena. How do I know that I will inherit this land? That was not good. Hashem said to Avraham, you're questioning how I will give you the land? I just made you a promise. And now you're asking questions. All of a sudden, the Torah says he fell asleep and he has a dream. And in the dream, Hashem appears to him and Hashem tells him the famous line, Yadoa teda ki ger yezarcha beretz olahem va'avadum v'inu otam 400 shana. You should know, Avraham, your grandchildren, again, what grandchildren? He doesn't even have a son. Your grandchildren will be slaves in a foreign land for 400 years. They will be subjugated. It's going to be a long time. And the Farshim say, why did he get this message now? Because since you questioned the promise of Hashem, so therefore you get this message right now. Okay?
It relates a different angle to this story.
Okay.
He wasn't questioning Hashem that his children were not going to inherit. His concern was, what if Bnei Israel sins and they then lose the merit of getting Israel?
Beautiful. That's a nice way of putting it, because like that he's not questioning God directly. He's got a different concern. What if they sin? What if they mess it up? Which is a very valid point. Be it as it may, there's still a level of concern that shouldn't have been there. Hashem is saying, I'm promising you. So what are you worried about? So Avraham has this concern. Question, what ended up happening? We know that they were slaves where? In Egypt, right? Question, why did they end up being slaves in Egypt? You know, at the time already, there could have been, let's say, the nation of the Plishtim. By the time the Jews were a big nation, the Plishtim were already a nation. Maybe they would be slaves to the Plishtim. Maybe they would be slaves to Midian. Maybe they'd be slaves to another nation. Why Egypt? What does that have to do with Egypt? So I'm going to share with you a Gemara. Okay? Says the Gemara the following. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. This is the same Gemara that we were talking about before. Masechet Sotah, Daf Mem Vav Amud Bet. Says the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi bishvil arba'a pesiot sheliva Paro leAvraham.
What's pesiot?
Pay attention. For the 4 steps that Paro escorted Avraham out the door. 4 steps. Shene'emar, as it says, Vayitzav alav Paro anashim. It says that Paro, he thought that Sarah was Avraham's sister. He took Sarah for himself, and he wanted to be with her. Didn't end up happening, but a lot of stuff transpired there, and he had to get rid of her. He gets rid of her, and he tells Abraham, okay, you're going to go now. But he sets him up with an accompaniment, with an escort. He sets him up with, in other words, he sends people to take him out the door. Now, if it's saying that they're walking him out and he assigns people to do that, so he is now escorting Abraham and Sarah out. And it's a small gesture of respect. How many steps did they take? 4. 4 steps. Because in Torah, that's always the minimum. Dal Amot, 4 steps. They took 4 steps to accompany Abraham out the door. Says the Gemara, because of that, Nishtabed bebanav 400 shana. Because of that, he got the promise that Hashem told Abraham, your grandchildren will be slaves for 400 years. Who are going to be the slaves? Who will they be the slaves of, rather? Paro's slaves. Why? Because he did which mitzvah? Levaya. He walked you out the door. He assigned guards to escort you out the door. So he got the 4. Can you imagine if it would have been 10 steps? It was 4 steps. Exactly. Amazing thing. He did this mitzvah. So this is something that's quite amazing. Now, I saw a really interesting comment from one of the Mefarshim on the Ein Yaakov. His name is the Rif. He says the following. He says, let's work backwards. Why did it go back to Paro? He says, what was the original reason for the shibud? We just said it a minute ago. Why did the whole shibud happen? Because Abraham said what to Hashem? He said, Bama eda. How do I know your promise will come true, Hashem? How do I know my children will get this land of Israel? However you want to explain it, right? How do I know that? So at that point, what caused them to say that? What caused them to say that? What caused him to say that is that he did not even have his nephew, Lot, anymore. Why? Because Lot, his nephew, who would have inherited Abraham as a nephew, where was he? He was in Sodom. What caused Lot to go to Sodom? The fact that they had so much money. It says that Abraham had money back in the day was sheep. If you had a lot of sheep, you were very wealthy. So Abraham had a tremendous amount of sheep. Lot had a tremendous amount of sheep and all kinds of things like that. And they didn't have enough land for them to sit together next to one another. They had fights between each other. The shepherds over here, the shepherds over there, they had fights. So Lot said, you know what? And Abraham said, let's separate. So that's what caused Lot to leave to Sodom. What caused Abraham to have so much money? Right? No, Abimelech. So what caused what? But one thing, on your way out, when you leave Paro, maybe people will take what Paro gave you. Maybe they'll attack you. Maybe they'll hurt you. Maybe they'll do something to you to take from you what you have. What protected the gift that Paro gave Abraham in the hands of Abraham? The fact that what? That they walked him out. Because we just got finished saying that when you do the mitzvah of levaya, when you escort somebody out the door, he's protected. So the reason that the whole thing happened, that Abraham in the first place asked the question, how do I know I'll inherit it? I don't even have my nephew with me. I don't have any kids, is because he had so much money that Lot had to leave him. And why did he have so much money? Because he was protected because of the escorting that Paro did for him. Why aren't we dancing right now? You gotta dance for this. That's like dancing. Are you following this or no?
I thought he said that he didn't even take a shoelace from Paro.
No, that's from the king of Sodom. That's from the king of Sodom. He was the one that he said, I didn't take a shoelace from you and all that. So that's what
Paro took.
Yes, correct. Right? So over here we see that it really all comes back to the source originally, and that's why Paro is the one that it reverts back to, that his children will be slaves to Paro, meaning to the children of Paro in the future. Now, here's the big question. There's another individual who took a few steps in honor of Hashem, and that was Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was one of the most wicked kings that ever lived. He was a very evil man. We spoke about him in the past. He did a lot of very disgusting, evil things. People saw him eating a mouse while it was alive. He did all kinds of things to the kings that he would conquer. He would sodomize them and then he would eat them. It was like a disgusting human being, like an animal almost. But before he became the king, he was the secretary to the previous king of Bavel, Merodach Baladan. That was the name of the previous king. And Merodach Baladan one day decided to write a letter to the Jewish king Chizkiah. And the reason that he decided to write him a letter wishing him well was because the king Chizkiah was a very righteous man. And what happened was Hashem, in order for the king Chizkiah to heal, increased the day by like 10 hours. One day, there was a day that just didn't end. There was like an extra 10 hours of daylight to the day. So he was wondering what's going on. And they told him that the king Chizkiah is such a righteous man that Hashem made a miracle for him and increased the daytime by like 10 hours. So he said, there's a man like this on the planet and I don't have what to do with him. So he wrote him a letter and he said, I want to write a letter blessing him that he should have a complete recovery, that he should, that his kingdom should last and that his God should be blessed, etc. And he wrote this letter. And Nebuchadnezzar wasn't there at the time, but he was the secretary of the king. And the other secretaries that he had wrote this letter. Now, what was the order that he said? He said the king Chizkiah should be blessed, should have a complete recovery. He said that your city, Jerusalem, should prosper, right? So he blessed the city. He said your God should be blessed as well, something like that. Nebuchadnezzar heard that and he says, you're writing the letter like that? The first blessing that you have to give is to Hashem, to God. Then you bless Jerusalem, which is much older than Chizkiah. And then you bless the king. So he rewrote it in the right way. And then he realized that the letter is already on the way out. So he started to run. And he ran 4 steps. It says that at that point, the Malach Gabriel stopped him. Because if he would have continued running in the honor of Hashem, then the Jewish people would be no more today. The zechut of such a wicked man running in the honor of Hashem gave him a tremendous zechut. So what did he get because of that? Says the Gemara Masechet Sanhedrin Daf Tzadi Vav. What he got was that the Jews were his subjects for 70 years. 70 years. So the Mefarshim have a question. Paro takes 4 steps and he gets 400, which actually equals 210. In total, it was 210 years. He runs 4 steps, 210 years. But Nebuchadnezzar runs 4 steps and he gets 70. So how's that work? You know who asked this question? Rabbi Yaakov Emdim. I think it was, Rabbi Yonatan, the opposite. Rabbi Yonatan Eibshitz asked this question in a book called Chumash in Perush of Yonatan Eibshitz. Very interesting question. Hear the question or no? Is it clear?
Yeah.
Yonatan, is it clear? 100%? Guys, it's clear? Yes?
What the sources of all the 4 steps of what happened was all
Gemara. All Gemara. Straight up
Gemara.
Gemara. Yeah. There's a Gemara Masechet Sotah Daf Mem Vav and Masechet Sanhedrin Tzadi Vav. They both talk about the fact that they took steps, meaning Paro had people escort Avraham 4 steps. He got 400 years in Mitzrayim with the Jews serving him, and Nebuchadnezzar got 70 years of servitude from the Jews in Bavel because he ran to deliver this letter. 4 steps. So it doesn't work out. So it explains Rabbi Yonatan Eibshitz a very interesting thing. The Gemara says the average person is 3 amot tall. 1 amah is about a foot, it's between 1.5 feet to 2 feet. So the average guy is 3 amot tall. The step that he takes is about 1 amah of the step. That's 1 amah. So the ratio is 3 to 1. He's 3 amot tall, his foot step is 1 amah. Paro was a midget. His entire height was 1 amah. That means that his step was a quarter. Well, a third of an amah. A third, right? Because that's the ratio, 1 to 3, right? So it turns out, very interesting, says Rabbi Yonatan Eibshitz, that the steps that Nebuchadnezzar took were, he was 3 amot tall, so that one step is 1 amah, then another amah, then another amah. That's 4 amot, right? Gets you 70 years. But for Paro to get 4 amot, he needed, right? He needed instead of 4 steps, he needed 12, right? So because his ratio, everything is much smaller. So it turns out that Paro is times 3 of what Nebuchadnezzar had to go. You understand? So Nebuchadnezzar had to take 4 steps only. Nebuchadnezzar had to take 4 steps only, but Paro had to take 12. So if 4 steps give you 70 years, so then times 3 gets you 210 years, which is the amount of time that they were there.
Wow. That
Again, you got that?
2 feet.
Not my chidush. Again, not my chidush. Chidush from Rabbi Yonatan Eibschitz. Was that clear or no? Dr. Shadow. Huh? Good? Okay. Sure. Okay. Fine. Good?
Paro was 2 feet.
Yes. Paro was a midget.
2 feet.
He was a midget. He would sit on a matchbox and his legs would still be dangling.
Why he become Paro?
What?
Why he become Paro?
So some say that many of them were very small. He was a very small person. Yeah. Nebuchadnezzar was different. What? Okay. So anyway, what I want to just, Nebuchadnezzar was, around between like 5 something and 6 feet. So what I want to share with you, Rabotai, I want to share with you just a thought. Again, the question is, why is this mitzvah of escorting somebody so powerful, right? So I want to suggest, I think I heard this before from someone, I can't remember who, but I think there's an important lesson here. The concept of escorting somebody is, there are many points to be made. Like we said, the Maharsha says that you are doing a mitzvah, you're helping the person, you're guiding him. So you're a Yirei Shamayim, you're a God-fearing person, and Hashem likes to do the will of God-fearing people. And if your will is that he should be okay, Hashem blesses him, he should be okay. Beautiful. There's an added concept, though, which I can't remember where I heard from, but the concept is that when you are escorting somebody, when you are helping somebody, and you're taking of your time to care for him, right? And you're not just in your own house, you're actually leaving your house, leaving your comfort zone to ensure that he is, first of all, feels good, second of all, gets to where he needs to get to, and he's going to stay safe. You know what that does to the person? That puts in his mind, somebody out there cares about me. To somebody, it makes a difference whether I'm alive or not. There's going to be somebody looking for me. There's going to be somebody who's concerned about me. And when he knows that, that gives him more of a reason to be a survivor, to be somebody who won't let himself become vulnerable, who won't let himself fail at his job of staying safe, because he knows that there are people out there who really care about him. There's a psychological element to this mitzvah. You help the guy, you guide him, you move him, you show him, so then he knows I'm not alone. This guy who escorted me out, who accompanied me on my way, that guy cares about me. He's thinking about me. He wants to know that I'm safe. So when you give that feeling to somebody, that's a huge mitzvah.
So today's
And why is it, I'm sorry to interrupt you, why is it that when you don't do that, what did the Gemara say? If you don't do that, you're a murderer. You know why? Because you're saying to the guy, I don't care about you. I could care less about you. Sayonara, have a good night. It's been enough that you've been in my house this whole time, right? I would have rather you never showed up, but you showed up. Okay, so now you're leaving. Baruch Hashem. Right? So that you give the guy a feeling of nobody cares about me, nobody wants to know from me, nobody is interested in me. So then why should I even bother trying to fend for myself, protect myself, do anything for myself?
You're talking about all guests coming they do lashon hara and they try to.
Okay, that's something
they
else.
do-
We're talking about
you
the
cannot
standard.
borrow him.
Okay, that's something else. We're talking about the standard gentleman that's coming to you.
Only in your house or in office?
What?
Only in your house or in office or work or other places too?
No, in other places too. No, the point is that he's coming to you, you accompany him on the way out. Okay,
So
Yes.
Today's meetings, guest comes to your house, you should go bring him to the car.
yes, that's
That's
the
already-
simple way of looking at it. Yes. I want to share with you just a couple more points, guys, which are important. Don't think that only what Paro did had an effect on his future. Sarah Imenu, who was there, right? What did it say about her? Sarah Imenu did not allow anybody to touch her. Paro could not come close to her. It says that she had control over a malach, an angel, and if somebody tried to get near her, she would tell the angel, hit, and the angel would hit whoever it was. Rashi brings it down on that parasha. So you should know that's not such a simple thing to do. Imagine you're a woman and you have the opportunity to become the queen. Not just like, somebody with money. Literally the queen. And it's not just the queen of some random country, it's the queen of Egypt, the empire that's in control of the whole world. You have an opportunity here and you decide not to take it. That's a big challenge. It was a big challenge for Sarai Imenu. Of course, you love your husband, you love Abraham, but a lot of people would say, forget this guy. Who's it? What? Oh, he was a midget too. I hear. But it was
she.
What? I don't know how old she was at the time, but she was still considered to be the most beautiful woman, and that's why automatically they said this girl can't just walk around. She belongs to the king. I think she was not yet, not at that time. I don't think so. But the point I'm trying to make is it was a big challenge. Says the Midrash, because she withstood that challenge, because of that, the Jews in this week's parasha, when they are multiplying and they're living in Egypt for a very long time and they're becoming slaves and they're under the control of the Egyptians, not even one single Jewish woman assimilated with an Egyptian man, not one. We cannot say the same thing today, but it says clearly in Parashat Emor, by the story of the fellow who blasphemed Hashem. There was a guy in Parashat Emor. That guy cursed, God forbid to even say in the same sentence, cursed Hashem. And the Torah says, what was his name? He was the son of an Ish Mitzri, and his mother was Shlomit Bat Divri. He had a Jewish mother, Egyptian father. Says Rashi, this was the only woman that had an Egyptian man live with her, and it wasn't even willing, it was rape. It says later on in Parashat Pinchas, when it lists all the names of all the families of the Jews, it says, Leachliel Mishpachat Hayachlieli, Puni Mishpachat HaPuni. You guys remember those psukim? To so-and-so, right, Mushi, Mishpachat HaMushi. To so-and-so, this one, this guy, he had his name family. This guy had his name with this family. So Rashi says, how come it has to do that? Why does it have to say, Shefufam, there was a man named Shefufam. So he had the Shefufami family. Why did you have to say that? Shefufam, Mishpachat HaShefufami. Says Rashi, because Hashem wanted to show that every family in the Jewish nation, Ha-Shefufami is Hey in the beginning and Yud at the end, which is Hashem's name. Hashem wanted it to be clear that there wasn't a single family in the Jewish people that intermarried with the Egyptians when they were in Egypt. That's why he put Yud and Hey around each family name. Where did that come from? It came from Sarah Imenu that was there in the house of Paro, and she held herself back. She said, I'm not doing nothing with this guy. That gave them the zechut for all the future generations because of Sarah Imenu. It's a very powerful thing. So
how come it's happening now? We're off?
Because we don't have the same level of Mesirut Nefesh that she did. Our job is to say, okay, if that's the way it works, Sarah Imenu does something in her time, and that's going to have an effect on her future generations. So then that means when we do something now, then that's going to have an effect on our future generations. So our job is to bring it in from ourselves that we should do what's necessary to fight it. And you're right. The fact is that it's not the same nowadays than what it used to be.
Why
Yes.
should she do anything anyway? She was married to Abraham Avinu.
Yeah, but it wasn't the same. It's not a king. At the time, Avram wasn't who he was. Like later.
But they were married. It was a husband and wife. She wouldn't do anything anyway.
I love I love that pure thought, but sometimes when people are presented with power and money and things change. A guy wins the lottery, you win the Powerball, Baruch Hashem, everything could be great, it could be comfortable, but all of a sudden you have tens of billions of dollars, things change a little bit. You're still going to be totally, people start to change. So I understand. But the point is, the Midrash understands that this was what made all future generations, right, become who they were because of her withstanding this challenge. It's a powerful point. Okay, very good. I want to share with you one final point before we call it a night. It's important to know this. Shouldn't go through Parashat Shemot without this. Rav Huna b'Shem bar Kapara. It says clearly the names of the sons of Yaakov all over again. It starts counting all of the children and their names. Why does it have to mention this? Explains the Midrash Rabbi in Sefer Vayikra, Parashat Lamed Bet. It says, Bishvil Daled Devarim Nigalu Yisrael Mitzrayim. There are 4 reasons the Jews were saved from slavery in Egypt. Number 1, Shelo Shinu Et Shmam. They didn't change their names. They kept Jewish names, which is a very important thing, says the Midrash. That's number 1. Number 2, Ve'et Leshonam. They also kept their language. They made sure to still speak Hebrew. Yeah, you want to speak Egyptian, fine, no problem, but you can't let go of Hebrew. That's our language. Ve'lo Amru, number 3, Ve'lo Amru Lashon Hara. They didn't speak Lashon Hara, says the Midrash. Okay? What? There's a different Midrash like that, right? They didn't speak Lashon Hara, says the Midrash. And number 4, like we just said previously, Velo nimtza benehem echad mehem parutz be'erva. There wasn't even one person that was parutz be'erva, that was not conducting himself with proper morality. They were all 100%. And that's why, by the way, it says, Ele Shemot b'nei Yisrael abayim Mitzrayma, et Yaakov, ish ubeito ba'u. These are the people that came down to Egypt with Yaakov, ish ubeito. What does it mean, ish ubeito? Every man with his wife. Says the Chizkuni. Why does it have to say every man with his wife? The Chizkuni explains, because it's trying to tell you, ish ve'ishto. It says, Lefi sheya Yaakov yodea ben Mitzrim. Yaakov knew the Egyptians were shtufei zima. They were filled with immorality. He was concerned maybe his children would do the same as the Egyptians. He married off his children before they even got to Egypt, so that they shouldn't even have the opportunity to do something wrong. They should be already locked into a marriage. So they made an effort. They made an effort to keep themselves pure and holy. So therefore, says the Midrash, that's why the Jewish people were redeemed from Egypt, because there wasn't even, in all those years, 210 years of slavery, there wasn't even one guy that messed around with an Egyptian woman. Can you believe that?
That's huge.
That not even one guy. Not one.
That's crazy.
You understand the Kedusha of Am Yisrael? There wasn't even one fellow who messed around with an Egyptian woman.
How come they go to 48 Tumah? If they didn't do all the
There was a lot of idolatry, a lot of avodah zarah.
so that didn't do Tumah.
No, because it's a different level, a different type of tumah, but it wasn't erevah.
Kedusha.
Yes, no, but my point is that in that you have to ask, if they're getting redeemed, they have to have some zechut. What was their zechut? So the Midrash says 4 things. Number 1, their names, their language, no lashon hara, and no gilui arayot. Purity in that area of life, which is very powerful to understand. Again, where does that come from? It came from Sarai Imenu, and it came from also Yosef HaTzadik. The Midrash says, since Yosef held himself back from Esh Potifar, it also gave them the ability to hold themselves back to it. Very amazing thing. So it's a very important lesson for all of us to make sure that we conduct ourselves properly. We have no idea what an effect it's going to have on the future generations. We have no clue. Okay, guys, we'll stop with that.
By Kaniel,
yes, we have a question.
I have 2 questions. Sorry to interrupt. First question is, how is it that through Sarah Menu doing what she did, not doing what she did with Paro, can have such an effect in later generations? Meaning, don't people have free will later on? Why is it that her actions stop them from even doing such a sin? And then the second question is, you said the 4 things that stop Bnei Israel from being that allowed Bnei Israel to be redeemed. One of them was Lashon Hara, but it says in this week's Parashat, Datan and Aviram spoke Lashon Hara. So how can you fix that or explain?
Nice. That's nice. Beautiful, Josh. Very nice. So I think that the first thing is regarding Sarai Imenu. Sarai Imenu created like a weapon. She created a weapon called Kedusha, and she put that weapon in Egypt. And then you have to use that weapon. You have to tap into it. So she created the opportunity to tap into Kedusha. She brought the Kedusha there. Now, many generations later, you're in a situation where you have a decision to make. Do you do what's right or wrong? You have the opportunity to go with the side of Kedusha because Sarai Imenu left it for you. She implanted it there in Egypt. That's number 1. I think that's how you would look at it. Number 2, regarding Datan and Aviram, yes, they spoke Lashon Hara. But it sounds like they were a minority of people. They weren't somebody that wasn't the general population. You had these 2 people that were making a mistake, but it seems like the overall population did not conduct themselves that way. And that's what basically saved the entire nation. That's the way I look at it.
But then you can apply that for all the other three of the 4 reasons that they didn't, that we Jews were redeemed from Israel. But then it says not one.
Yeah.
So you're saying the majority?
It doesn't say it exactly in the same words by the Lashon Hara, but it says, but by the Erevah, it says, Lo nimtza benehem echad. There wasn't even one guy parutz be'erevah. That's the language that it chooses. So just running with that. But it could be by the other one, it's a little bit different. That, yeah, you had these 2 guys, they slandered Moshe. But other than that, he didn't have it.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, we'll stop over here. Chazakim Buchim.
Rabbi, very
Thank
good.
you.